Hi guys, Kathy Freeze here. I've been a Purple Martin landlord now for going on 14 years, and I wanted to make this video to show everyone how I made the owl cages that prevent the great horned owl from getting into my Purple Martins every night. I've gotten a lot of questions about the details on it, so I'm going to show you in the next segment all the parts that we used and the details of how to put them together. So I hope this video helps you. Here is a list of the materials that we used, and these will also be included in the video description of this YouTube video below. Okay, so the idea here is to keep the owl as far back from the gourds as we can. And so we started out with, this is the super system that we bought, and it has 4 of these 4-foot arms here on each level. We drilled a couple extra holes down here on the bottom so that we can put 4 gourds across the bottom and not have as many up here on the top. The first thing we did was we added these aluminum angle arms, and I think we measured these were 6 feet across the top. We drilled a hole in each end and then strapped them down to the ends here. But what we did, I guess I should back up, was we cut some 18-inch pieces. We drilled holes in them and then bolted them to the end of these 4-foot arms that are already on the super system. And that helped extend the end out for the support and the cage to keep it further away from the gourds. So these were 18 inches, and these supports right here were 6 feet across. Again, drill the holes in each end, drill the hole in the top of this so you can mount the 6-foot piece to it. And then we just simply used the heavy duty, I don't remember what pound weighted these were, I think 40 or 80, something like that, I don't know, the heavy duty ones. Mount them to the arms to help support the cage at the top. The other thing that we found when we were adding these 18-inch extensions was that the bolts that are there for the mounting arms, we had to go buy new bolts that were about, I think, 1/8 of an inch longer, just to make sure you can get the nut on the other side to mount that bracket with. So the other thing we did was we bought these angled in arms. We figured out about the second year that the owl liked kind of hitting the gourd entrances on the front near the cage. So we bought these angled arms to make sure that the gourds are turned back towards the inside of the cage, and that helps keep it even further away from the edge of the cage there. And I think we ended up with a net 12 or 14 inches from the edge of the cage for some of these. Now you can also bow your cage out more if you need more space. That was another adjustment that we made just to get them further back. So the next thing we did was we took and we cut the top so that she couldn't drop in from the top wire up there to cover and close the top. And then we drilled or used some of the mounting holes that were already here in these arms to help pull the cage down and secure it at the top. So that, see, that one has dry rotted, so I'll have to replace that. But that happens with zip ties. You have to go through each year before the birds get here and check all the zip ties, see if any of them have dry rotted and need to be replaced. Not really a big deal. So anyway, we zip tie the top down so that she can't just drop in on anybody and surprise them. And then once we get that mounted all the way around, then we start with the side panels. And I'm going to go outside just so we can check the side panels. But first, before I do that, I do use the Troyer horizontal gourds up here on the top. Just because I have them. You can use Troyer vertical gourds or whatever is your preferred gourd here. I like the Troyer vertical gourds and the horizontals. just because they have the Conley 2 entrances on them and they're good quality gourd, so I really like using those. So these, again, this welded wire fencing is 4 feet tall. You can see I've got it on each one of my Super System gourd racks here. And it's the 2 by 4 inch openings. And the way we hung it was we used zip ties. We cut each panel the length it needed to be, and then we zip tied these to the end of these 18-inch extended arms. Again, you got to check those zip ties each year and make sure that they're secure. I didn't like using bolts because if I wanted to take something off, it was a pain in the neck to do so. So I can just carry my wire cutters with me and cut the zip ties loose and pull the panel off if I need to. Then the other thing I did was, along the way, to help support it, since I had the roof on already, I used these little bitty zip ties to just secure the cage to the edge along there and close it up. So for the edges where the cages meet, we also zip tied those together. And here on this second level, you can see we've got another zip tie here. You really don't have to use zip ties a lot of them, because once you zip tie it in, I think this one's zip tied in 3 places. Yep, down here at the bottom too. You know, the owl isn't going to open that and get inside of it, so we just zip tied in 3 places at each corner. And then the way I get in to do nest checks is usually when I'm under there, I'll wind it down, and when it comes down around me, I have the gourds out along the edge here of the fence, and then I can just reach out and grab them as I do nest checks and replace gourds or whatever I need to do. Or the other way I can do it is I just cut these zip ties here at the edges of the panels, and then they flip out, and then I can just walk in and do whatever I need to do in there. So another thing that we use here that was suggested by John Barrow, I thought it was a pretty brilliant suggestion, was use this Undersill trim. So we used, I think we used 10 snips on these to cut them. Even though they're plastic, they were still hard to cut, and 10 snips was the only thing I had that would work. But anyway, they have this flap that when they mount the siding on your house, that's where it sits. But this, when you cut this wire, even with your flattest wire cutters, it tends to leave this little nib in here that's really sharp, and I didn't like the idea. And it has one on the top too, but Martin's going to land down here, and I didn't want it damaging their feet. Maybe it wouldn't, but either way, this Undersill trim just pops right in there. Yeah, you got it, and it snaps down like that. And because you leave this wire down here under the bottom, it can't rotate or flip off or anything, and it won't come off without a lot of work. So this helps give the Martens not only a visual, but also a nice solid landing spot, because the wire's so thin for them to land on. So they can land here and go on in. We cut the 4x4 openings just randomly. I didn't want them to be right directly in front of any gourd or anything, because the Martens, really, they just land on these, and then they just kind of spread their wings and fly right on in. So those were just random everywhere to have enough for the Martens to get in and out. 99% of the Martens, when they exit these cages, will just drop out the bottom of the cage. When they enter, a lot of them, it's just random how they enter. They'll land on the top and drop in from the top, or they'll use the little landing pads I've made for them with the 4x4 openings, and some of them even come up from underneath and fly up to their gourd, especially if their gourds are on the bottom. Okay, so I hope that helped everyone. I wanted to address some of the questions that I often get about the owl cages. For example, the first question that I wanted to address is, are the owl cages 100% effective? The answer is no. The owl cages are not 100% effective, and the reason they're not 100% is because the purple martins still come out in the morning to dancing, and some of them insist on sitting on the outside of the cage, in which case the great horned owl definitely takes advantage of that. However, I can say that it would be 100% assured that the great horned owl would be successful if I didn't have the cages, and she probably would have wiped out my colony by now. So last year I had 4 purple martins that were caught and by the great horned owl, and I know this because I use a house monitoring camera, security camera, to monitor the yard, and I use game cameras as well, pointed at each one of my poles, so that I can tell what the great horned owl is doing and how many she has caught. Of course, I'll never know how many she has caught out in the trees, etc., things like that, but I do know that without the cages she would have wiped out my colony by now. So are the cages 100% effective? No, of course not. Nothing will ever be 100% effective, because purple martins will always be purple martins, and they'll come out and do their dawn singing and things like that and risk their lives. But last year I had 4 caught, and I am positive of that, and I can say that my colony is not abandoning. I can tell that I have about 75% of adults in the last 2 seasons that have returned, and about 25% of my colony are subadults. So that shows that the cages are working. Yes, I lose a few, but the cages are working. So one of the second questions I get is, do the purple martins hurt themselves when they exit the cages? For example, if there's a hawk attack or they flush for whatever reason, do they hurt themselves on the inside of the cages? The answer is no. I have never found an injured purple martin from smacking the inside of the cage while trying to flush during a hawk attack or any other emergency type situation where they get scared and they decide to flush out. They do fly into the side of the cage, but none of them have ever been injured. That's not to say that it will never happen, but in the 7 years I've been using the wire cages, I haven't had any injuries so far. So the third question was, does it slow the martins down during a hawk attack? No more than they normally are slow. The things that I have noticed is it does prevent hawks from flying in and snagging the purple martins off the porches. The martins will still perch on top of the cages and be at risk, especially the new fledges. But the thing that has helped prevent the hawks from being successful the most is having the trees cut back, using multiple decoys around the area, as well as I set up 3 bird feeding stations around the area as well, near the tree line, and that helps keep the hawks from being successful with the purple martins as well. The cages don't prevent the purple martins or slow them down at all. They always drop out of the cages if there's a hawk attack, and the hawks are no more successful than they normally would be. I have seen a hawk come in and try to snag purple martins out of the cages, but the hawk actually flew into the side of the cage itself and smacked itself. Fortunately, it didn't hurt the hawk either. I think she was a bit startled that she actually ran into the cage. So no, there are no problems down, especially with having an open cargo net at the bottom of each cage. I have 14 by 12 openings in the cargo nets that allow the martins to drop out pretty easily. And the hawks, for whatever reason, as of yet, they have not flown up into the cargo netting as well. Maybe because they're afraid of getting entangled in it or whatever. And the owl hasn't flown up into the nets either underneath, so that has helped as well. So those are all the questions that I have addressed. Hopefully this video has helped you. If you have any further questions about the owl cages that I have built, please feel free to leave them in the comments section below, or you can email me from my blog, or contact me on the PMCA forum or the Purple Martens Landlords and Wannabe sites as well. I am frequently on there, so you can just reach out to me and I'll be happy to answer your questions. I hope this video helps you. Good luck this year, and just know that just having an owl in the vicinity is not a disaster. You can work with the owls and still have a purple martin colony. So thank you for listening. Before embarking on building these wire guards, I would encourage any landlord that thinks they have an owl problem to first set up a game camera or 2 or 3 so they can see what's really happening. And if you really do have an owl problem, then do continue monitoring even after you've built the wire cages. You'd be really surprised at what you will learn.